All right, good morning, everyone. I hope everybody's having a great start to their spring uh, this April. I'm Jeff Becker, I'm your CAS chair, and I'm also the Executive Director of Facilities and Operations at the Office of the Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. Welcome to our monthly virtual membership meeting. And if any of you are first-time attendees with us, let me offer you a special welcome and feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. That's how we'll communicate with each other this morning. And just a reminder about that for the attendees that are coming into the meeting right now, that you are muted, but we do want to hear from you and be responsive to your questions. So please use the messaging feature. Make sure that you're messaging to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see the question that you may have. And just a gentle reminder to please refrain from any marketing in the chat box. And Courtney, if you'd push us to the next slide, please. Hopefully by now everyone has had a chance to check out the CAS member portal. If you haven't, make sure you go in there and set up a profile in the portal. You can manage your membership, you can communicate directly with other CAS members, and a host of other features in there. So if you do need some assistance in getting your portal profile set up, you can email Aileen at the CAS office, and you see her email down below on the slide. So make sure that you check that out when you have a moment. Next slide, please. And I'm excited about this. This is another opportunity for us to be together in person. CAS is hosting a legislative and policy forum May 17th in Long Beach. So we'll be down in our vice chair's neck of the woods. And what we're doing is bringing together public education professionals, private sector professionals and experts, and they're going to share their knowledge, their vision, maybe some predictions or worries and what their instincts tell us as we prepare for what lies ahead. You know, COVID is still impacting what we do a bit, and there are a lot of new programs that have come into place like TK, and we're still kind of planning in that unsettled area. So make sure to join us for this in-person opportunity. To register for the forum, please visit the CAS website. I believe Courtney is going to drop a link in the chat box as well, and looking forward to seeing some of you folks down there in Long Beach in person again. All right, let's take us to the next slide, please, and we'll jump into our state agency updates. And the first update that we have is from our friend John Gordon and Joe Anderson with the California Department of Education. Gentlemen, why don't you join me up here on the screen? Good morning to both of you.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks, Jeff. And I was just going to say that I have Joe Anderson who will be sharing from our emergency services team. I have a really brief update on my end. I just want to remind folks, you know, again, please submit your projects early and often. I want to share kind of a situation really quick. Just kind of a reminder. Sometimes you have with your projects, maybe toward the end of, as we're given final approval, there's some design modifications or changes. Please understand that when CDE approves a project and we make these minor modifications and changes, it's expected to actually happen. So it's, you know, when we give a final approval, it's really expected that the construction of the project is consistent to what CDE and DSA approved. So there have been situations that we've experienced where maybe we would require a design change after a project receives DSA approval. And as a condition of the final approval, it's expected that the architect of the district, you know, submit those modifications for DSA review and approval. We recently come across a situation. It's not necessarily an isolated situation, but it just kind of just kind of renewed the attention here where CDE and the architect and the district agreed to a design modification. However, when we press for evidence that it's submitted to DSA to review it, we were told that that's, you know, it's part of maybe the master plan, something that they're looking to make that modification somewhere down the line. You know, sorry folks, you know, when we agree to make a change, that change actually has to happen at the time prior to construction. We do expect that to occur. So consequently, in those types of situations where we're asking for those minor changes, design modifications after DSA approval, we may be coming back and asking for evidence to ensure that DSA has also looked at it, so that when OPSC goes to approve the project, that the plans are consistent to what both DSA and CDE signed off on. So really, to avoid these types of situations, again, please submit your architectural plans to CDE and DSA at the same time. Also, if you have designs that aren't going to comply necessarily with Title V regulations, and you know that, consult with us early. We welcome at CDE, we welcome early engagement and to talk about those situations if they are going to be problematic down the line. Please respond appropriately and timely to your CDE preliminary review letter that we issue. And finally, I would certainly urge districts to not start your construction projects until you get both approvals from DSA and CDE. So with that, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Joe Anderson. So Joe, what do you have to share for us?
So yeah, I mean, we are approaching fire season, and I just want to share a few tips with you all about the upcoming wildfires. Hopefully there are none this year, but that's not realistic here in California. The outlook right now from CAL FIRE is that we're going to have fires this year. There's still dry conditions. We're not getting as much precipitation as we normally do, even though we do have snow on the mountains and everything right now. We're just expecting this drought to continue, and of course, winds in certain areas. So if you're in those areas, if you have schools in areas that are kind of in mountainous regions, especially if there's lots of forest around it, those are kind of high priority targets, I guess we would call it. Is those are places that you really need to pay attention to and try to prepare as much as possible. And I know it may be too late right now because fire season starts really kind of in July. Used to start in September, but it's getting earlier and earlier. Our biggest fire, second biggest fire ever in California, started in July last year. That was the Dixie Fire. So that's about 2.5 months before we really have to start looking at it. But fires are happening all over the place right now. So I'm just going to share a few helpful tips and tricks for you that may assist you and the schools that you serve. So the very first thing I want to point out is backup documentation is to back up your important documentation on the cloud. So if you have a lot of documentation that's all paper in your facility, guess what? Paper burns. If a fire comes through there, that's all gone. And I've seen that multiple times. So it's really important, if you don't have something in place now, is to start considering, at least for important documentation, to have a backup on the cloud somewhere. So in case a facility is destroyed, you have that documentation. You know what the students' grades are. You have the personnel documentation for the teachers and all that, so that way you can kind of continue your operations. Also know your ingress and egress routes for your school. That's always important. I'm sure many of you already have that, and you know that through your comprehensive school safety plan. But that's very important to know, because you never know where a fire is going to come from, and you just have to make sure you have multiple routes to get in or get out, I guess, during the evacuation. Also, just make sure, like in advance, just have that contact information for your local emergency management and also your insurance folks too. It's really important to get insurance involved early on in this, because they are going to help you quite a bit, even though it might be a little bit of a fight. They will help you quite a bit in the recovery process later on. But the local emergency management folks, those are going to be people at your county office. There's usually like an emergency management entity within each county, and you would just contact them, and they can start providing you local resources much faster than the state can provide you resources. Also, just kind of making sure that your school facilities are kind of clear of a lot of debris and leaves and things like that. Usually up to 30 feet is okay, but I know in heavily forested areas, they recommend up to 100 feet for clearing trees and stuff, and that's a much bigger project. But at least cleaning the leaves and debris, that's something that can be done now. Also, one thing I do want to share, and I'll put this in the chat just after I'm done speaking, but there are a few resources which are really good for knowing your own risks in your county. So these are county-specific things that you can look up that will show you where in your county what risks impact which parts. So one is called Listos, that's Listos, and My Hazards is a tool from Cal OES that shows exactly where these hazards are in your county. And also there's hazard mitigation plans for each county, and that really gets into the weeds of where what type of hazards your county has and how frequent they could be, how disastrous they can be, all that great stuff. So I will provide those links in the chat for everybody here in a minute. But those are just kind of my little tips and tricks now. Obviously, when a fire happens, you really want to focus on safety. Just get everyone to safety, follow those evacuation orders when they come down. And also use SERS, which is the School Emergency Reporting System. This is something we've been kind of pushing for since September, maybe slightly before that last year, which is when it went live. And we just recently did a test of this new reporting system. This allows us to kind of work with you more directly and also be able to kind of report out to our state partners what your unmet needs are, so that way they can fill those. So that helps with situational awareness and also helps us kind of display that picture to the rest of the state so we can get assistance for you. And I can go all day about this, but the last thing I want to talk about besides wildfires, because most of you realistically are not going to be impacted by wildfires directly, but air quality is always going to be an issue here in California. So many of you will be impacted by the smoke that comes from these wildfires since they extend across multiple states. So I would say now, if you don't already have them, purchase portable air cleaners for classrooms. You can use your AB 86 Safe School funds for that, or ESSER funds, to purchase these things in case you were curious, what funding source could I use? Those are a couple of them right there. Always make sure you monitor the air quality, because I've heard a lot of complaints directly from parents, about, hey, air quality is bad. What should the district do about this? And really, it's a local decision. What CDE does, we have an air quality guidance, which I can also provide in the chat, which really helps, make that decision. Should you have these outdoor activities? Should you close school for the day? But anyway, the guidance, that's all it is. It guides you and you make that decision yourself. So with that, that's all the resources I want to share right now. I will go ahead and put some things in the chat for you, and I'll turn it back over to Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John and Joe. Hey, Joe, let me ask you a quick question before you enter those items in the chat. Have you heard anything, or do you foresee any future PPE pushes related to COVID coming our way? It seems like we're kind of down to masks and testing as the two areas.
That's a great question.
Anything from your channels on that?
So I have not heard anything from my channels, but we do have a meeting with CDPH today with all the county offices. And that would be a great question to bring up there, just kind of ask, hey, are there any pushes intended in the future? Because really CDPH controls the PPE and Cal OES ships it out, and we report to CDE the date and we coordinate that information. So it's like a tri-agency collaboration to get this done. But I have not heard anything specifically. Kind of where we are with that right now is that if your county needs PPE, you can order it directly through Salesforce. So if you don't know about Salesforce and you want to learn how to order directly, feel free to just reach out to me directly. I have like kind of a help sheet on how to do it. It's pretty simple. And then you can just request whatever PPE you need right up front.
And that's still operating at the county level, right? Not at the district level?
That's correct. It's still only at the county level.
All right. I appreciate that information.
Great.
John and Joe, thank you so much for being with us. Joe, I'll let you drop those items, those links in the chat. Thanks again, and have a great day, guys. All right, next up, we have Michael Watanabe with the Office of Public School Construction. Michael, good to have you with us this morning. Hope everything is going well at OPSC.
Morning. Little hectic. We are doing our first hybrid meeting today. So we'll have in person, all the board members will be in person at the State Treasurer's office downtown today in Sacramento. This looks like the wave of the future for a while now. So we've been doing a lot of tech setup, a lot of practicing how this is going to work in multiple locations, but we think we have it down. We will still do the Zoom webinar format. So anyone who wants to do public comment can do it through the Zoom format. We'll do the raise hand feature just like we've been doing all pandemic. The board members will be in the room. They'll be able to see you if your screens are on and hear you. They'll be using mics in the room and using one camera feed. So we won't have the 10 member feeds like we did before. They'll be on one wide angle like we used to be in the Capitol, basically. For the rest of this year, for the most part, we will be in the State Treasurer's Office conference room until they let us back into the actual Capitol building. But tonight it'll be 4 o'clock, and the Zoom webinar is, the link is on our website under our meetings page if you are interested in joining tonight. The hybrid meeting, it is a smaller room if you do plan to attend in person, but you can go there. You can do public comment. Lisa and Barbara were presenting the agenda from that room as well. So there will be a handful of us there. And that's on the 5th floor in Capitol Mall, 915 Capitol Mall. From the agenda, a few highlights from the EO statement. We have tomorrow a charter school facility program application workshop with the filing round that's opening up next week. Aaron Kunin, our subject matter expert in charter, will be walking through how to submit an application in OPSC online in conjunction with CSFA and the entire process. So that workshop is tomorrow at 10 a.m. It'll go to 12:30 p.m. There is an Eventbrite link on our meetings webpage as well for getting that webinar link. Another stakeholder meeting, following up on Joe's comments. We're having a joint agency workshop, and this one's a little bit larger. It'll be with Cal OES, CDE, DSA, OPSC, and we will include a school district for a case study too, specifically for planning for and addressing natural disasters. This one will have a lot of pre-prep planning information from the various agencies. Cal OES will probably take about half the time on what to do in preparation for a natural disaster, including wildfires. The workshop will be on May 5th from 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. And they'll provide you all the key contact information as Joe mentioned, so that when an event happens, you know who to contact from each agency to reach out as you proceed through the process of recovering from that. So again, that's May 5th, 9:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. And the Eventbrite link is on our website as well. We have the California Preschool Transitional Kindergarten and Full Day Kindergarten Program filing round open up right now. It opened up on April 1st and it goes through April 30th. As of end of day yesterday, we've received 51 applications. 69 of those are new construction, 1 retrofit. So far, they've requested about 302 million. So we're already subscribed for this first round, which means preference points will come into play. Just from what it looks like there's requests for 61 preschool classrooms, 174 transitional kindergarten classrooms, and 111 full-day kindergarten classrooms. So it kind of gives you an idea of what people are asking for. Those 51 applications came from 51 different school districts, I believe, as well. Back on April 7th, we sent an email blast regarding the economic sanctions at the federal level to follow up on the governor's executive order for California's guidance in compliance with those economic sanctions. So OPSC is required to send a notification to anyone that receives a grant from our office about the need to comply with those sanctions. There are links in that email blast to the U.S. Treasury website on the companies that the sanctions are imposed on. So the school districts are kind of expected to review your contract to see if anyone is on that list. And it is a rather lengthy list. I think I last looked, it was 170 pages or so. There are specific reporting requirements on OPSC's part that needs to go back to administration. We don't know what those are for projects that received more than 5 million in grants from us. So that'll come in the future on what you need to provide to us on efforts to comply with the sanctions. So keep an eye out for future notifications from us on that end. A common question from school districts was, though, do you guys have to do the notifications? And our understanding is not. It's only the agencies and departments directly under the administration's control. So not school districts at that level. You just need to comply with the actual sanctions and who you issue contracts and grants to from your level. All right. 2 action items this month. The priority funding apportionments are going out this month. With the apportionments and the general fund money that we gave out in January, we had an extra 250 million in bond sale money to give out. So we sent notifications out to everybody that got projects approved for unfunded approval at the March SAB meeting. Out of those 250 projects, 243 elected to use the new regulations to get funded in advance of the normal priority funding rounds in May and November. It looks like we'll be able to fund almost all of those. Only about 67 million is not funded from the March projects. In total, we'll give out 652 million tonight for 216 projects. The fund release authorization for those projects is due July 26th of 2022. And you can use OPSC online up until end of day for that submittal. And just a reminder, it's always our end of year processes for financial reporting. State Controller's Office does not issue warrants from June 15th to about July 1st. So if your fund release comes later in May, you might feel a couple week delay in getting your warrants. So just a heads up on that process. And speaking of which, we are researching the ability to electronically transfer the funds to school districts into their county office or county treasurer's office. That should shave off about 2 weeks in the fund release process. There's quite a bit of setup we need to do to have that happen in the state financial system, but we are exploring that this year to allow that faster release of money too as well. The other action item we have is the facility inspection tool. It's been a little while since we had the stakeholder meetings for that, but we're bringing forward our final recommendations for what that tool could look like. All those changes were discussed at the 3 stakeholder meetings we had. We didn't make any really huge surprise changes that should shock anybody. So those are our recommendations. We expect that to go through consent tonight or get approved tonight as well. And then lastly, our next meeting is May 25th. Should be at 4 p.m. as well, and it will be in the same hybrid format. And again, at the treasurer's office, most likely. And the only other thing I want to mention while I have you is thank you to those. We've reached out to some of our heavy users of the program and that do a lot of submittals via email about OPSC online usage. And we got some good feedback that we're going to continue to enhance and improve OPSC online to encourage more adoption of it as we go forward and more paperless processing. So we encourage everybody, reach out to your PMs, project managers from OPSC. We are more than willing to help you out and walk you through the submittal process. We do understand there's a learning curve on new systems, as always with any new IT systems. So we're more than willing to help you out. You just have to reach out. We can screen share, walk you through an application, walk you through your actual applications and go screen by screen as to get you comfortable with the system. So we're here for you if you need it, but we really encourage the feedback as well. And with that, turn it back over to Jeff.
All right, thanks, Michael. We did get a few questions that came in. We've got a couple of minutes. Let's do the easy one first. Could you go over again the TK numbers or the full day kindergarten application totals?
So let me scroll back up. So we've had 51 applications from 51 school districts so far. 69 of those applications, oh, wait a minute. Oh, for 69 new construction projects and 1 retrofit project. So that means we probably had some combinations in there. From a classroom standpoint, they're requesting 61 preschool classrooms, 174 transitional kindergarten classrooms, and 111 FDK classrooms, full day kindergarten. If you include financial hardship funding in total, we have 302 million in requests.
All right, thanks, Red. And then I think that the Russia sanction issue is generated some questions.
Yep.
Regarding what to do if we do indeed have a contractor that is on that list. And you said, I think it was 170 pages. So we'll be coming through the list a little bit first to figure that out.
At the moment, we are having everyone contact their legal counsel for specific advice because the government, from our interpretation, the governor is basically reinforcing what the federal level did. So it goes back to the federal guidance and to attempt to cancel contracts if you can, or be sure you don't sign new ones is our interpretation so far. But that's all the guidance we have at this level. OPSC, we have 1 contract. It's a new one that we just did. We basically sent the information to that contractor. We know they aren't on the list, but we've reminded them, hey, you can't have any subcontractors on this list as well as you continue to work on our program or with our funding. But that's a direct OPSC contract. So we think the advice to the school district is pretty much the same kind of process, but we would recommend you contact your legal counsel for what you can do with your existing contracts and the wiggle room you have there.
Yeah, definitely good advice. Talk to legal folks. That was my first instinct when I got that email, was to forward it on to our legal team and get recommendations for any language in new contracts as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for being with us and sharing this morning, Michael. Hope the virtual or hybrid meeting goes well for everyone this afternoon.
Thanks. Hey, if I may, Joanne asked one more question, and it was actually a common one we get. Do school districts have to send notifications? And that information came from our legal counsel in terms of, unless you see yourself as a direct report to the governor's administration, you do not have to do the 45 notification. The EO reads as agencies and departments, and we read that as offices like ours, the various state agencies and departments directly under the governor's office, versus I believe like CD, they're not directly under the administration, so they're not required to that notification, is understanding. So unless you view your school district as one of those, you're not required to do it.
Appreciate that clarification, Michael. Maybe also a good one to talk to your legal counsel about if you think you might be one of those agencies. All right. Well, thanks again, Michael, for joining us today, and have a great afternoon. All right. Next up, we have Nancy Charles Espinosa with, we don't. We have Rebecca Curley, Nancy Charles Espinosa, and EMPD with a legislative update.
You do. It's good to be with you all. How are you?
Good, Nancy. How are you?
I'm good. It's nice to be in this hybrid place where we're starting to do some things back in person. So this is lovely. As always, I'd like to start by situating our conversation and what's happening in legislative land, and then I'll move on to budget land. So this Friday, April 29th, is the deadline for policy committees to hear and report fiscal bills. So it's a very busy time in the state legislature. Those bills which the legislative, well, excuse me, not the legislative analyst, but the legislature's attorney, keys non-fiscal, get one additional bill. And, you know, I say non-fiscal kind of in quotation marks because we don't always agree that they are in fact non-fiscal. So there could be a lot of very substantive bills in that group. May 20th is the last day for fiscal committees to hear and report bills to the floor. That's a Friday. They typically finish in these marathon hearings the Wednesday or Thursday before. So those are key deadlines in which all of the bills that we are watching and working, we either want them to pass those deadlines or we're hoping they kind of get caught in that net. And then May 23rd to 24th, that last full week of May, is floor session only. They are working around, well, not around the clock, but certainly full days to get all of those bills dispensed with on the floor and for the most part moved on to the second house. In the budget, there's a lot going on this month as well, particularly that second week. So the May revision is the governor's updated and more complete proposal of what he would like to do with the budget for the 2022-23 year. And it's informed by actual tax receipts and updated projections, things like that. That is due May 14th, which falls on a Saturday this year. So we will likely see a May revision on the very auspicious date of Friday the 13th. And be assured, your cash advocates will issue an update for members that day. The main items that we are watching and working are the one-time non-Prop 98 general fund request for originally $8, now $10 million for the school facilities program and TK facilities, which would get us through the end of 2024. And the other thing we are watching for really is an indication of the governor's position on a school facilities bond. If we see, the full 8 to 10 proposed, that would probably signal that the governor's preference is to go general fund route. If we see partial, that could either indicate a willingness to support a bond or some other maybe multi-year general fund commitment. So as always, the situation is fluid and we will change our strategy or make decisions as necessary once that decision, once the May revision is released. We're not the only ones in that position. AB 75, the author of O'Donnell, the author of AB 75 is watching as well. We've all had the same conversations with decision makers and stakeholders. So we're going to watch and see what we need to do for next steps after we have that information. I do want to plug really quick, if you are interested in an opportunity to hear more in depth about the May revision and how it will affect our work. May 17th, CASH is holding a legislative and policy forum in person in Long Beach. That will really be the first opportunity to have more of an in-depth conversation and ask questions with CASH advocates about the May revision and everything that's happening with these bills. But other than that, you can be assured that we're also going to provide an update at next month's CASH general meeting on May 25th. There's one bill I want to talk about before I hand it over to Rebecca. That's AB 2214, authored by Christina Garcia. It's actually joint authored also by Assemblymember Alex Lee. CASH issued an oppose unless amended letter on this bill, and it has been amended in response to our request. We are still in the process, however, of making sure that those amendments address all of our concerns. So the author's intent here was to make private schools and charter schools citing decisions subject to the same provisions as traditional schools, particularly with respect to CEQA. They were looking at health and safety issues. They overshot a little bit, and they actually presented a bill that would have created some additional and unnecessary steps for us. So we're working with the author, the Assembly Committee on Education staff, and we're going to take a closer look at that language of that amended bill and see if we can remove our opposition. And with that, I'm happy to pass it on to my colleague, Rebecca.
Thank you, Nancy. Good morning, everyone. I will pick up where Nancy left off and talk a little bit about some of the bills that we're working on in the legislature. I reported last month about AB 902. This is the bill that is authored by Assemblymember O'Donnell that creates an alternative design build process, which is essentially a progressive design build. The approach authorizes open book procurement. You'd select your design build entity through a best value process and negotiate your guaranteed maximum price a little bit later in the process after some or all of your design has been completed. This bill is sponsored by LAUSD, and in concept, it's something that CASH has supported in prior efforts. However, the bill was amended because of concerns from opponents, not CASH, to limit who could use this authority to districts that had more than 50,000 ADA and for projects that were $10 million and above. So CASH has been working to negotiate amendments with the sponsor, the author, and then also amendments that are acceptable to the opponents, who are the Construction Employers Association and some of the subtrades. Where we are in that process is, I believe that we've come to a place where CASH is satisfied with what's been negotiated. Key is removing those limits on which districts could use this this defined alternative design build method. The issue is that we're waiting for the amendments to be placed into the bill. This bill is a 2-year bill, so it started its process last year, and now it's on hold a bit until the rest of the bills that were introduced this year catch up in the legislative process. So we should see some action when this bill will be referred to the Senate Education Committee, likely in a couple of weeks. And at that point, we're expecting to have the amendments added to the bill. So good hopefully resolution there. And I do really want to thank our members who have come forward to provide information about their experience using progressive or their intention to use it. And of course, thank Frank on our CASH board for everything that he's done to help move this bill through the process and to get CASH's concerns addressed. The other bill that I want to mention is AB 1867 Lee. And this bill is related to school facility program modernization projects. CASH has some concerns about this bill, and we may be moving into an oppose unless amended position on this, but we're still evaluating our options. This bill is saying that all SFP modernization projects must include faucet, aerators, and water conserving plumbing fixtures in your restrooms. It doesn't say all projects that are planning to do work in the restroom must do this. So it would be mandating that you touch your restrooms and you do work in there regardless of if that was your original plan for your project. We are concerned, of course, that the state is mandating how to use the grant without actually increasing the grant to cover the cost of that policy priority. And of course, we're always concerned about mandating work in certain areas and what additional work that it may trigger. So we're continuing to work through this process. The bill has been passed by the Assembly Education Committee and is now pending in the Assembly Appropriations Committee. One silver lining is that when it was in the Education Committee, it was amended to tie to the passage of a future state bond. So those requirements wouldn't go into effect unless we have a future state bond. But still, it does tie our hands, limit what we're able to use the grant for without the grant being adjusted to reflect those costs. So we're going to continue to work on that for you. The other thing that I wanted to mention is Mr. Watanabe did talk about the transitional kindergarten, the preschool, transitional kindergarten, and full day kindergarten facilities grant program funding cycle that's open right now. We're encouraged to hear about all the interest in that program. We are asking for additional funds from the budget, $2 billion in order to cover additional transitional kindergarten facility needs, because we know the $490 million isn't enough. We've just heard that that program is oversubscribed, and it is providing funds to 3 grade levels when we know that we need to focus our efforts on transitional kindergarten, bringing those facilities online so that we can house those new students starting next year. So we'll continue to work on that. And as Nancy said, we'll have a better sense of what our options might be once the May revision comes out, those April tax receipts are in hand, and we see how the legislature and the governor are starting to prioritize the use of additional one-time dollars. So with that, I will hand it over to Ian, and thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Rebecca. Another excellent update. Appreciate that. I'm coming to you from the Yolo County Office of Education. That's why there is no conspicuous percussion wall behind me, but I'll try to do my best. So first, before we leave the issue, I appreciated Michael Watanabe's brief presentation today, but work on this update of the facility inspection tool form and so on. It's an important piece, increasingly important piece, not only to M&O, but to all kind of folks in the Capital School Department. So it's very important. We'll be looking more into that, but as Mr. Watanabe said, it's essentially unchanged from the stakeholder discussions and so on. I would say, though, that it would be useful to look at OPSC's analysis of it, and in particular, on pages 359 to 362, there is a text comparison of the changes from the previous version to the now version that contains OPSC's recommended changes. And so that's very helpful. In addition, on pages 374 to 381, attachment C, that's very useful because that goes into specifically what some of these changes will be doing. I, of course, in the next few days, will be doing more analysis and be doing more of a focus on that, but I wanted to let folks know right away that OPSC analysis is very useful. So thank you to them for that. I'm going to talk fast. My earphones are running out of juice, but I wanted to talk about a couple of more bills kind of in the same area that the bill that Rebecca talked about, and that's this now familiar issue areas of air, water, and energy, and so on. 2 important bills to look at here. One is SB 1144, and that has to do with a proposal for new required water assessments and testing for additional materials other than lead. It's much more extensive than that, but I'll kind of leave it at that at this point. We've, in the cash office, have been doing a lot of work on that bill, meeting with the author, the sponsors and other folks in the education community, such as AXA and who else has been with this? CASBO, others who are also concerned about the bill. You heard Nancy talk about kind of the legislative timeline that we're working under. So we're working on some of the concerns that we have, that we hear from you and that we know, to try to make some changes to the bill. And in particular, we think we'll have a stronger argument, a stronger voice as we go into the fiscal committees, because this bill will cost some money. So continuing to work on that. We do have a meeting with the author and the sponsors this Friday to continue to see what we can do. So continuing to work on that bill. But again, SB 1144, become familiar with that bill. The other one, kind of related, is AB 2232. And what that has to do with is again, this popular issue of HVAC systems and air quality. A lot of it's basically making CalShape for the whole state with some of those opportunities, but also some of those constrictions as well. One of the pieces to look out there, and what we're looking at, is the impact on the requirements for CO2 monitors. We know that it's in the green code. We know that DSA has guidance on them, but we're looking at very, very closely at that. And that's where a lot of our efforts will be focused on that piece, because that's new stuff. And there's a lot under that blanket, we'll say. So just quickly, those are two bills that we're focusing heavily on. And I think I'll just also, we have discussed these at the Legislative Advisory Committee, which we had, I believe, a week or 2 weeks ago. And also, as folks have been mentioning, at the Legislative Policy Forum on the 17th in Long Beach. That should be actually good timing for having a better sense of where we are in these bills and these issues. So continuing to work on air and water, I would say. I guess I'll close down with saying I'm coming to the Yolo County office, coming to you from the Yolo County office, because we're in the middle of, or actually wrapping up these cash technical trainings, which are focused on budgeting and M&O departments. This issue we're talking about of using, for instance, CSFRI information to help bolster arguments in the LCAP process for M&O funding and programs and so on. It's been very good. We'll let you know more about that, but we're basically dealing with all the issues that we're talking about in legislations. Folks talking about water filter systems, how we do that, how we can fund those, things like that. So it's all to say we're continuing to work. And with that, I will wrap up my comments and pass it to the next speaker. Thank you.
All right, Ian, Nancy, and Rebecca, thanks for the thorough update as always. We're in that time of kind of waiting for everything to happen and the floodgates to open up. So Ian, I think that you are our next speaker if you're doing our school energy coalition update. So
yes, I am.
That's why those earbuds hang on for a few more minutes.
Yes, I think they're going to be okay. And I'm now in the tech room, and so I have privacy. So if I have to rip them out, we're going to be okay. Thank you for your concern. What I'll talk about under SEC, what SEC, of course, is doing. There's bills about, and a lot of them related to the green code and so on, with electrical vehicle charging stations, not just the stations themselves, but the infrastructure, so on. And of course, as you know, trying to make sure that those bills are reasonably implementable, if that's a awkward word, and but more importantly, funded. And so that's kind of the general framework on those bills. There's 2, 3, 4 floating around. Won't get into all of them that SEC is following, but doing good work on there. What I'll mention about under the kind of the SEC banner is the CalShape program. We all see it, and you know the Maintenance Networks talks a lot about it, very interested about it from the air quality perspective. But remember, it is implemented by the school or the California Energy Commission, because it has a lot to do with energy. So SEC or the CEC focuses a lot on that as well. What I'd like to say here quickly is that the CEC is in the process of you could say opening up eligibility, expanding the aperture of eligibility, as a lot of universally they've heard from stakeholders, right, about some of the restrictions that the regional restrictions, things like that. So that's very good news, and that's good news because rounds 2 and 3 are coming up. So we know that's CalShape is not a total solution, but in these 2 rounds, there'll be around 200 million and then another 200 million. The first round is completely exhausted. So that shows not that the program is perfect, I think, but the extent of the need. But there are definitely energy efficiency and resiliency associated with the CalShape program as well. And so SEC will continue to work on that, as well as the cash maintenance network. I will remind folks, particularly because I've talked about SB 1144, that CalShape, we all think of it, I'm guilty of it myself, as thinking about it as an error HVAC program, and it is, but it is also has a component about plumbing and water and some of the issues that SB 1144 envisions. Some of the things, of course, we're saying is the money is completely insufficient, but it's important to remember that as well. That's another source of funding in addition to ESSER and RRMA and however you cobble it together. Think of that as well with the plumbing pieces. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ian. And are you doing the Californians for School Facilities update as well?
Not to my knowledge. So.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so we'll just keep moving through our morning here. Next up, if you take us to the next slide, as you know, we just finished up our 43rd annual conference in Sacramento back in February. Alan, do you want to come up and share how the planning process is going for the 43rd?
Yeah, absolutely, Jeff. Thank you. Yeah, we are actively engaged in the planning for the 44th annual conference, which will again be back in Sacramento at the Safe Credit Union Convention Center, where we'll be continuing to enjoy those newly renovated facilities that everybody enjoyed so much. Currently, there is a call for topics that is out. If you didn't find that, that's available on our CASH website, where you can submit topics of interest and educational workshops that we will be presenting at the conference in February. The planning committee is actively working to really look to refine and improve the conference. As we always say in the conference planning committee, that the next year will be the best conference ever, following on the heels of the 43rd annual conference. So deadlines to submit those proposals is May the 13th. So make sure to give us all those great ideas that our community has on what type of workshops and topics that you'd like to see at the credit union moving forward. So be sure to mark your calendars for February the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th in 2023, back in Sacramento for one more year at the Safe Credit Union Convention Center for the 44th annual conference on school facilities. So that's it, short and sweet, Jeff.
All right, thanks, Alan, and great job to you and the planning committee and all the work for the 43rd, and looking forward to the 44th. All right, next up, we have our series on briefings from our school district folks on the COVID-19 reopening experience. And I realize, we're in April now. This is not a reopening experience any longer. We're coming up to the end of the school year. And we've really had quite a journey of managing the COVID-19 process and surges all along the way. We're happy today to have with us Ara Zaresny from Newport Mesa Unified School District. Ara, why don't you share with us your experiences?
Great. Thank you all for having me today. So yes, we've all been through the reopening experience. And I just wanted to start off by saying that one of the most beneficial aspects of going through this was the collaboration that we had with our education side of the house. As you all know, being in the facilities or maintenance and operation side of the house, sometimes we operate independently. And because of the immediate need and desire to get our students back in classrooms, both maintenance has had to step it up 1000%, and facilities has had to take on a new role in order to make that happen. So some of the things that we've now inherited after going through this process is things such as student furniture, and really looking at standardizing that student furniture, because when it came down to bringing kids into classrooms and having to have spacing requirements, we learned that some schools weren't equipped to do that. So that was something that now, as we move forward, facilities is playing a much greater role in standardizing furniture, to the extent that we are actually processing purchase requests and purchase orders in order to ensure that everybody has the adaptability to function with space requirements and in a standardized manner. Some of the other things are leases. We have quite a few properties that we have tenants on, such as our YMCA or our child development centers. And so that communication that occurred was also a critical aspect of it, to ensure that they were all following the same protocols as the district. But what I would like to do is focus on something that has been a long-lasting program and not just reopening, and that is our cloud campus. So because students weren't present or in person, part of that response to the needs of students was to create a cloud campus. And initially that cloud campus provided students the opportunity, when we did return to school, to still have the option to remain at home and learn. In our first year of providing that program, the attendance was 2,200 students. There was a great desire for students to return to campus, have that what we would consider typical interaction and social emotional need to be on campus. However, there are some students, and the way that I attribute this or understand this is, just like we offer programs for GATE or special ed, those type of things, there are some students that thrive in a cloud campus. And so although we went from 2,200 students in the first year during COVID, once we had established the cloud campus, we've maintained that campus. And so currently we have 380 students. And the purpose of maintaining this program is to support their emotional, social well-being. So we have been able to see our students not only participate in school more than they had regardless of COVID, but also be able to improve in their scores, their test scores. And so the district continues to support this program, which I see a tremendous compliment to our district, and understanding the needs of our students, which we have been able to sustain. So currently our students are K, or will be TK through 12th grade. We also support electives through those grade levels that's appropriate. And we also support special education through the cloud campus. And so if you're thinking about it long-term and our current funding or expenditures to support that program, it does end up being about twice as much to support a student. But our district has made the commitment, our board has made a commitment to continue to support that program. It includes English learners as well. And currently this year, with our 380 students, the district is supporting the program at $4.2 million. So clearly it is more expensive. However, our students are receiving what we would all call class size reduction attention. And we will continue to do so. So rather than think about the negatives of what COVID has done to our districts, it's more important to understand what our district has done to continue to support programs that we see as a benefit for students. Class sizes are smaller. And then I just wanted to talk about COVID implications for construction. So we're currently planning for projects, and there are certain projects where we have considered delaying bidding projects because of the lack of availability of materials, delayed or long lead items. And so we've been weighing those as well, and it has caused us delay in our projects. And so we had to determine whether or not delaying awarding contracts was more beneficial cost and then the benefit of our students to determine, should we proceed now or should we proceed later? So if you read the newspapers, you'll hear about some of those things. We've had some great challenges, but we also find that by weighing those options, we're better to serve our students. And then I just wanted to make comments on a couple of things from earlier, specifically the fire inspections. And so one of the things that I think districts need to keep in mind is when your facilities department completes projects, that we all need to remember to update our school safety plans, that we all need to remember to invite our local authorities to walk projects with us, to ensure that they're familiar with new buildings, that they're even though they approve our plans before we go into DSA, but that they're familiar with what our plans are, so that when it comes down to an actual emergency, that we're well prepared for it. We've been dealing with this on an ongoing basis. We have installed site security fencing at our sites, a few of our sites, and those are one of the things that I heard a little bit earlier about, just making sure we're including our risk managers and things of that nature. So I know that my counterpart, our director of maintenance, is on this, and I'm sure he'd probably have a lot more to say on the maintenance aspects, but I know that they're doing a tremendous job to keep our facilities, classrooms, lunch tables, and playground structures clean and safe for our students. So it's just been a great collaboration, and I'm sure everyone's actually tired of hearing about COVID, but this cloud campus benefit is something that I'm very proud of for our district to continue, because it really has helped our students tremendously.
All right, thanks a lot for sharing that. All right, I think that we're now at the point where we're evaluating what we learned during COVID and what worked well, and really what are the things that we're going to continue to do that maybe we hadn't thought about doing prior to COVID. But certainly there are some things, even like our meeting here today with Cash, of being together virtually. Some of these things have worked really well. I think that your cloud campus is a great example of that. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. All right, we've got just a few final housekeeping announcements slides. Job exchange and people's choice. So if you have an upcoming RFQ, RFP, job opening, make sure to use the Cash Professional Opportunities job board to post that. You can reach a really diverse and expanded group of folks by using that feature that's available to us. And you see some of the great opportunities there on the slide on the screen. Make sure that you log into your Cash website, and members can post their RFQ, RFPs, and job openings there. All right, and next slide, please. Just a reminder that our next Cash Day will be on May 25th. Again, same time, 11 a.m. to 12:15. So please make sure you've got that on your calendars. And looks like we'll finish just a few minutes early today. So let me just wish all of you folks a great day and great month to come. We'll see you all in May. And thanks very much for joining us. Oh, and I do see Marty popped in with a last second question. We will be on Zoom at our May 25th meeting, Marty. We'll still be on Zoom. All right, thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great day.